The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamite, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. That's right. It is Monday, March 4th, and today is National Sons Day. So shout out to all the sons out there. It's also Marching Music Day, National Grammar Day, National Hug a GI Day, and National Pound Cake Day. Thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast, and please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look down below to see where we live on the internet, and we are live every Monday through Friday. And today we are only on YouTube because I am driving the wheel. But nonetheless, we are going to kick this thing off with the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamite. The dope dad who loves to do the Cabbage Patch, and I'm not sure why I can't see you today. But oh, man. Here we go. Rico Lamite, are you ready?
See you.
You see me. Okay.
I'm ready.
All right, let's roll. It's all you, baby.
Let's go. All right, Jason. Well, I got some classic news out of the great state of New York. As you know, our favorite punching bag here at High at 9 News, but it is always out of love. Big shout out to all my people out in New York, but y'all got issues, man. Let's see, you guys keep on talking about them. So Governor Kathy Hochul's been on a statewide PR tour over the last several weeks trying to convince constituents and investors alike that everything in New York cannabis is just fine and law and order is on its way back to stomp out all that illegal cannabis activity. Well, don't seem like New York City Mayor Eric Adams checked that last group chat before hitting Friday's press circuit. As reported by the Daily News' Chris Sommerfeld, Adams promised Friday to not take a, quote, heavy-handed approach toward those who sell marijuana illicitly in the city and give New Yorkers his blessing to smoke more pot. Adams reporters at the Cannabis World Congress and Business event he was at that he doesn't see a need for cracking down on anyone calling ganja out of stores or on the street in interim. Here's what he said. There needs to be a system of not heavy-handedness, going in and explaining to that store, listen, you can't do this. Give them a warning. Instead of fines or arrests, he said that he wants the city to help steer them towards the soon-to-launch legal market. He also noted that he earmarked $5 million executive budget proposal for providing support to New Yorkers on applications for recreational sales and cultivation licenses. If someone refuses to get in line after receiving a slap on the wrist for illicit weed pushing, though, quote unquote, some form of enforcement may be warranted, he said. If they refuse to adhere to the rules, then they have to come back and take some form of enforcement actions, such as a summons, such as, talking about their ability to sell alcohol. In a speech at the expo, Adams even joked that he was, quote, a bit disappointed that there wasn't a nice scent of weed in the room before encouraging attendees to spark up. Enjoy yourself. Light up. But most importantly, spend some money. We want your money. Per the article, a man in the crowd reacted to Adams' remark by saying that he would head outside for a joint. The mayor told us we can do it, so I'm going to do it. Asked after the speech if he ever smokes marijuana, Adams only laughed in response. Mayor Adams also appeared on CNBC's Squawk Box Friday to say people who don't like smelling marijuana being smoked in public should tell their state legislators to change the law. Well, on the surface, I kind of love this approach that Mayor Adams is taking here, but at the end of the day, he's a cop. And not just a cop that reinstated the same broken windows policies made Rudy Giuliani back in the day famous for normalizing stop and frisk harassment by cops on communities of color. Adams is also perpetually in the hot seat for shady business dealings, and in his first few years in office, racked up a number of political enemies looking to take him out after one term. Currently, New York's got the highest number of active surveillance cameras in the country at 70,882. That's 71,000 chances to get caught on tape breaking the law in New York City's 2025 hypothetical return to heavy-handed enforcement. Remember that. I want to know what happens when Adams is gone and whoever succeeds him in office actually starts enforcing what he put back in place. I'm Rico Lamite, the dopest dad on the street for High at 9 News, America's #1 daily news show. And even though y'all can't see me, I see Jason over there.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm in here and I smell the smoke. I smell some smoke.
I love
first and foremost, Rico, most people cannot see you, brother, in broad daylight with a spotlight. I just wanted to say that first and foremost. You know what I'm saying? Because cats just can't see you, dog.
They can't.
Go ahead, Jay.
They can't see me. They can't touch me. That's why they call me incognito, baby.
Oh,
Let's
boy,
go,
incognito. Oh, geez, here we go. I mean, I love how he just defaulted to the legislature. Like, hey, if you don't like smelling weed in the streets, go to the legislature and tell them to pass some law so we can start locking people back up.
Yep.
That's classic. It's classic.
I mean,
it's classic. Mm-hmm.
Let's try doing the opposite 1 year. Let's just try slimming down our law book. Instead of adding more laws into it, let's go through our law book. Hey guys, we're going to do a house cleaning and we're going to go through this big ass book and we're going to get rid of all the crap that's in here that costs us money, that costs us resources, that drains our jails, that drains our criminal justice system. And then we'll start from there. And if you guys want to pass more stupid laws on top of those, then we can do that.
Yeah. Hey, I'm not mad at that.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I'm not mad at that at all. Yarrow, you have any thoughts on this, Yarrow? Are you even there? Yarrow?
Look, I love to keep it spicy and disagree, but I feel like on this, Luke spoke well for all of us, summarized, I think, common sense and a heart-based approach to how we police communities and we don't criminalize human behavior.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not shocked that Mayor Adams is taking this stand. Like, you know, he in essence is in partial hands to creating this problem, because when he came in as mayor, he said he wasn't going to arrest anybody for all this. But now, Rico, you're the professional backpedaler. Would you consider this a backpedal?
No, man, it's a cop. I consider it a lie.
You consider it a lie.
Better to have a backpedal than a backhand. I mean, what I really appreciated about the comment was that he talked about commerce. And I think when people start to recognize the economic opportunity that regulated cannabis presents for their constituents, they have a quick chance to change their tune.
Interesting.
I think it's a setup. It's a trap. See there, Jason?
Oh yeah, I see what you did there, bro. It's fucking classic New York trap. Classic New York trap, you guys. Oh man, you guys are so crazy. All right, we're gonna go to a commercial. We're gonna be right back.
Oh man, that was weird. Hey, you America. Do I look like Sean Connery?
Good
Good morning, America. Saman Razani coming to you live from sunny Los Angeles, California with the one and only highest host, Mr. Jason Beck, smoking on the best weed in the world. Did you know that we have an audio-only version of our podcast? You can find it on Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. No excuses in 2024. If you haven't checked us out, check it out now. And also, check out what the Prophet's doing in 2024.
Find the click.
Yeah, and we're back, you guys. We're back. You guys have lots of
All
jokes.
right,
Yeah.
next. Up next, he is the one man on High 9 News that you can see.
Yeah.
But it's funny.
You guys are all welcome.
But it's funny because he also, like his favorite president, believes that he is untouchable. Y'all know who it is. It's the High 9 News head show, known for smoking the best weed in the world, the highest Republican in every damn room, Jason Beck.
Yeah. Good morning, Rico. Good morning, everybody. Hope you all are having an amazing day today. So this is a little bit of a longer article, but I'm going to try to power through this pretty fast. There's a hearing on a recall of 60,000 Missouri marijuana products is all set to begin. We've been talking about this recall for a while, but Jason Sparks is an Oklahoma man who almost single-handedly created the distillate that led to Missouri regulators' decision to pull more than 60,000 marijuana products off the shelves in August and revoke the license of Robertsville-based Delta Extraction. Now he's a star witness in a hearing scheduled to begin Monday morning where Delta will try to convince the Administrative Hearing Commission to reverse its license revocation and allow it to sell its products in Missouri. In the days leading up to Monday's much-anticipated hearing, the state and Delta Extractions filed hundreds of documents detailing the investigation into marijuana products the state has deemed illegal and the company is aggressively arguing against. Among them is the 8-hour testimony Sparks, who the state's attorney called one of its most important witnesses, in quotation marks. Delta Extraction contracted Sparks' company S&D Equipment Leasing to make the distillate, or a THC concentrate that goes into the vape cartridges and edibles. When he first began in March of 2022, Sparks was making the distillate only for marijuana brand Contre, an Oklahoma-based company. Sparks' wife, Tanya Conte, owns Conte. As an out-of-state company, Conti can only make its products at a Missouri licensed manufacturing facility that can legally obtain marijuana. But in the spring of 2023, the supply for marijuana distillate was low across the state, and Sparks began making large amounts of that Delta sold to about 100 other Missouri manufacturers. The heart of the case is what's in the distillate. Sparks extracted a small amount of THC from Missouri-grown marijuana, which the state heavily regulates. Then he added a THC oil that was extracted from hemp, a product that is completely unregulated. The state says Sparks' testimony is important because it speaks to one of their bigger concerns, health and safety. Sparks testified that he can't recall where he bought his hemp-derived THC oil or if it was tested before he added it to the Missouri marijuana oil. In quotes, "It's such an unregulated market that it's not even a second thought," Sparks said on a hemp product. In quotes, "I know that's frustrating for you. You know, the state, that's truly how it's been running for years," in quotes. However, the company will argue that it's not legal to add intoxicating hemp products to marijuana because hemp is legal. Sparks' testimony and those of Delta's leaders also clearly show that the company has been making the product since 2022. It's unclear how the state knew about the product of one of the top-selling distillates in the state, and Delta's attorney Chuck Hatfield said several documents show the state's compliance officers knew what the company was doing before the recall back in August. He said Missouri didn't specifically ban adding hemp-derived THCA to marijuana products until the state's final rules went into effect on July 30th. And in quotes, internal emails show that compliance officer Heather Biliow believed Delta's use of THCA was lawful prior to the July 30th rule change, Hatfield told The Independent on Friday. Sparks testified that during the week he worked as a manager for Conte, Oklahoma, where he oversaw the production of the products and customer relations. And in January 2021, Sparks started his own company in Missouri to rent cannabis extraction machinery to companies and produce distillate on the weekends, according to the state business registration records. For a brief time, he said in his testimony, Sparks contracted with another manufacturer, Heya, Heya, to make the same hemp marijuana distillate at the center of the Delta recall. Heya, which currently has 4 marijuana manufacturing licenses, was also producing Conti products. And after Conti and Heya parted ways, the leaders of Delta Extraction saw an opportunity and asked Sparks and Conti to enter into a partnership which began in March of 2022, according to testimony from Delta owner Jack Moritz. Ever since that time, the distillate using Conti products was made exclusively by Sparks on weekends, as was the Delta's top-selling bulk distillate the company later sold to other manufacturers. And according to records, state investigators obtained the majority of THC in the distillate came from the hemp-derived THCA oil, which the state doesn't regulate, and a very small amount of Missouri-grown marijuana. Missouri requires that marijuana is tracked from the time the seed is planted all the way until it goes into the final product, and no one from Delta monitored the distillate production, Manitz testified. Sparks purchased all of the oil made from THCA, which is a cannabinoid that has to be heated to produce a high. Delta had no knowledge of where he bought it, and Sparks said he didn't keep records of that. Oftentimes, Sparks testified that he paid with cash or traded his existing services for the THCA oil and relied on verbal agreements. That's common practice in the industry, he said. In quotes, "You build up a network of relationships that you know are solid people," Sparks said, "that you know care about the product." Sparks said he also had no record of the supplies that were tested, the oil was tested before he got it, but Delta's team would test the final products and input them into the state's tracking system called Metric. When sold on its own, the distillate was not required to be tested, Moritz said, but they did test it to ensure the quality. The cost to make the hemp marijuana mix was much less expensive compared to 100% Missouri-grown marijuana, both Moritz and Sparks testified. And Sparks said this practice is not an anomaly. People are switching farms to grow THCA, he said. No one wants to deal with the marijuana. First of all, it's too uptight and it's not federally legal, so nobody wants to mess with it anymore. So everything literally is going to hemp. Moritz said Delta leaders believe the state understood what they were doing and had given them permission when they approved the standards and procedures on Delta's of their processes they used. The state's Division of Cannabis Regulation has accused the company of inversion of illegally importing marijuana products from out of state and adding it to Missouri-grown marijuana products. And Hatfield said the division never communicated that adding the hemp product was against the rules until the company's license was suspended in August 2nd. In her interview with The Independent, Hatfield pointed to an email that Adam Weatherly, a compliance team supervisor with the division, sent 2 days before Delta's suspension, which was uncovered during the appeals process. Hatfield said it shows that Weatherly and a compliance officer, Heather Belial, who was Delta's main contact in the compliance office, were confused about whether the company was doing what was allowed. In quotes, Heather thinks they found a loophole in the emergency rules prior to 7:30, which would be July 30th, as does not think the THCA fell into the category of not being able to be used until the final cannabis rules took effect on July 30th, Weatherly wrote. Heather and I are concerned about what we were to tell Delta about modified product in their inventory, end quote. However, during the appeals process, the state has argued that the emergency rules filed on January 20th prohibit the practice, and Corral lies on the Administrative Hearing Commission, sided with the state in August 29th order, and the only testing of the cannabis regulating agency added to this line in its final rule, she wrote, was the clause such as THCA in quotation marks. In quotes, we agree with the department that language added to the permanent rule did not change the requirement of the emergency rule that THC is marijuana products could only be derived from marijuana cultivated by Missouri licensed cultivation facility. The order denying a stay on Delta's suspension states, Delta's use of the hemp THCA was not the only reason for revocation, Amy Moore, the director of the Division of Cannabis Regulation, had previously said, in quotes, while Delta's extraction use of out-of-state cannabis is our regulated system, has been well publicized and is a crucial issue. The Division of Cannabis Regulation also found numerous other violations of rules at this facility, Moore said in a press release in November. I find it interesting they didn't mention any of those, but whatever. The division also said that Delta did not properly maintain video surveillance footage or have necessary safeguards to prevent intrusion at a facility, and the division argues that Delta falsified product tracking records and that regulators could not ensure the product was properly tested. In a November letter to the state's attorney, Hatfield countered that the company did test the product in compliance with the law, and Delta also agreed to pay for retesting of any Delta product. Hatfield wrote in a letter as well as to destroy all the product in its facility in order to reach a settlement with the state. In quotes, should the parties not reach an agreement, Delta intends to challenge the department's authority to regulate hemp-derived products, Hatfield's letter states, and the courts will not entertain a legal challenge against the state until Delta's extraction appeal process is completed, a judge has already ruled. Missouri would then be among several states where companies are challenging the state cannabis regulators and authority to regulate hemp. Unlike marijuana, hemp is very little psychoactive properties, but since the businesses have been in a race to create ways to produce the most prominent psychoactive ingredient element in marijuana, Delta-9 THC, using hemp plant, on September 8th, a federal judge in Arkansas granted a preliminary injunction in a lawsuit against the state, saying the hemp-derived cannabinoids like THCA are protected under the 2018 Farm Bill. And in quotes, should Delta succeed in that challenge, Hatfield wrote, the industry would be free to engage in bringing in industrial hemp products from outside the state for use for marijuana products. The company released a statement to The Independent that Delta is eager to defend its reputation during the hearing, and in quotes, we are confident that the facts presented will show the revocation of our license was unwarranted, it states, and reveal the inconsistencies and overreach that have characterized the division's process. Well, you guys. Man, I think this case should have some long-lasting effects for all cannabis markets, not just in Missouri, but I can't wait to hear what you guys think about this.
That was an extra long article. It had some lasting effects for me. I was like, why did you not summarize that for me a little bit?
Where is AI at?
I'm sorry.
There was no visuals. I didn't see Rico on the screen.
Mm-hmm. I apologize, guys. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I mean, you gave me the Missouri version with footnotes and asterisks and source citations.
You have a source citation, huh?
I got a source citation.
First thing is really important. Rico, there's a really important thing right here we need to figure out. And this is I think going to get to the core of this issue is, okay, so Hatfield is the guy who owns Delta 8 Extractions, correct?
Delta Extractions,
and
yes.
the McCoys are the people he's fighting with.
Exactly. Yeah. Who are the McCoys? Who did he mess with to where they're coming after him now? Because this has been going on for a long time.
Centuries.
And we know this.
And I'm talking about the real McCoy too.
Yeah.
Not the fake ones.
I'm just saying.
But seriously though, they're trying to stomp out THCA and all the hemp derived products. In a nutshell.
I mean, if Jason keeps reading 27-minute articles, we'll be stomping out everything.
That was not even close to 27 minutes, Yarrow.
Mr. Weed for the people himself, Elliot, had a pretty intriguing take on how Trulieve got that $113 million.
I saw that
back from the IRS. And he thinks that it has to do with the fact that technically they've been shipping THCA, and it's technically
Mm-hmm.
it is legal. I wonder if that will have ramifications on how the other states are handling THCA, if true, and if this thing will hold water at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, very slippery slope that we're
Oh
talking about
yeah, it
here,
is.
and yeah, and when you classify hemp
Mm-hmm.
that they have as separate from, I don't know, marijuana, I guess you want to call it the more heavily intoxicating version of hemp, and scientifically you're already wrong because it's the same plant.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly.
um
Right.
it, so
I appreciate that Jason brought this article because it continues to highlight this drastic difference in the way that these two plants are regulated. And at the end of the day, they're both cousins, and we should be regulating cannabinoids, not source material. Uh,
mhm,
Or should
and
we
and
be
it,
regulating anything?
yeah, no,
I
we
mean,
should be
I mean,
regulating.
not like not anarchy. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like, are we over regulating by continuing to do this?
Well,
Is my point.
we're under regulating hemp and we're over regulating cannabis. And somewhere
Right.
in the middle, there's a place where we have age restricted, safe supply chains that don't overly tax every
mhm,
single business in that supply chain, and
right,
where we can have some coherent policy. My little sources tell me that we're not going to see that in 2024, that we're probably going to see in 2025. And in the meantime, unfortunately, I think we're going to continue to have more articles like this for Jason to opine on, because there's this massive disconnect between the way the two are regulated, and it's not fair to operators. We don't know. I mean, if you've ever been the subject of an article by anybody, then you know how untrue they can be. So it's
right,
tough when you don't have somebody's comment, or they weren't made available for comment, or they didn't get their side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because this article really unpacked and unloaded a lot on these people, including falsification of documents. And I'm always going to suspend my rush to judgment until I've heard from somebody directly.
So,
Mm-hmm.
Jason, correct me if I'm wrong on this. So the process here is the Missouri cannabis was tested, but he brought in cannabis from another source that was hemp derived
So
cannabis
so
oil, and that doesn't have to be
so
tested.
So how I interpreted all this, Luke, just so you're clear, is imagine they had like 1 liter of delta of delta or of distillate that was derived from cannabis base that was licensed within the state of Missouri, and they took that 1 liter, and then they took, let's just say, like 100 liters of THCA distillate, and they cut all of those liters with their THC distillate that's from the Missouri, from the Missouri lab, and then basically they said, "Oh, now we have all of these distillate liters, and now they're all safe to use as products within the medical
And they're
system."
saying they didn't have to test the other distillate because it was hemp derived.
Well,
But there's
no. It was like he's like it sounds like they tested it for potency, but at the same time, I happen to agree with them on that they didn't need to pre-test it, because if you're gonna test the products in a final form before they go on the shelf. So I don't see the big
Okay,
deal
that's
in
my
the not
point.
testing. Yeah, I don't see the big deal in the not testing
That's
personally.
my point. My point is this: is okay. Like when you have the distillate from Missouri that's licensed and legal and yada yada yada, right? And then you have this hemp-derived oil that comes in on top of it that doesn't need to be regulated or tested according to federal law, current federal law. So you add that into that system, right? Okay, there didn't need to be any pre-tested. I don't see legally what that, but at the final product stage, there still does have to be a test. So did no test happen at the final product stage and then just went out to market? Like, I feel like they're trying to blame this company when I feel like if that's the process, then there's a lot of things that need to work in favor of this company, and some mitigating factors like, you guys had absolutely no barrier or threshold to be tested before something went to market. Like that doesn't make sense.
Well, especially when you have the regulator saying, "Hey, we thought that this was legal prior to the ruling that went in on July 30th," and then at the same time, like I don't see anything that says that they couldn't use it prior to afterwards, other than anything after July 30th had to be all derived from cannabis that was licensed.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like if you had
Huh.
10,000
There's a
liters
lot
of
of layers to
distillate,
this.
if you had 10,000 layers of distillate on January 29th, I don't see why you couldn't use them after. I mean, who knows? I don't see it. I don't see it. But
Even if you could or couldn't use them, right? Like at the point of when the hemp derived oil is brought, there's no regulated need for a test or legal need for a test at that point, right?
yeah,
Which is foolish. I agree, but that's still the way it is.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So when you add it into that other distillate, I don't know. You would have to have a final test before it would go to market, and if that wasn't done, then we have problems.
Exactly. Well,
no matter what.
I think final tests were done on final product before it went to the consumer, because I don't think that's what we're actually discussing here.
Just whether or not that it was hemp that was obtained within the state borders. Is that the?
No, I think it's more or less not necessarily obtained on the state's borders, but more or less that.
It sounds like they changed their supply chain regulated guidelines so that you were allowed to use hemp-derived cannabinoids. Then you weren't allowed to use hemp-derived cannabinoids. And when these people used hemp-derived cannabinoids in the regulated cannabis supply chain, they got in trouble for that.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you, Yarrow.
Exactly, Yarrow. Thank you for that synopsis, Yarrow. And on that, we're going to keep this train rolling. We're going to roll in to Mr. Yarrow Kubrin, who is the invisible man today, I'm sorry to say. But he's also does real estate. He does cannabis, and when there's actually money on the table, he will do some cannabis real estate as well. That's right, it's the Sebastopol sage himself, Mr. Yarrow Kubrin. Sorry,
man,
bro.
I don't even get the canned applause today.
I'm sorry,
up.
bro.
So
I'm
you
sorry.
know,
I'm sorry.
Actually, to be honest with you, Luke's applause on my screen is more gratifying than any button you could press. And the only reason our viewers cannot see me today is because you raised the height of the table and I am underneath it because I am vertically challenged.
It's a 4'11" table,
like a
Yarrow.
lapdog, I am.
It's a 4'11".
That's right, like a
4'11"
lapdog
table.
And I need a booster seat. But like a lapdog, I am at your feet. So, good morning. Monday morning, March 4th. Good morning. High at 9 News viewers. Yarrow Kubrin. Super glad to be sharing this show with the Luke of Profit and Jason Beck here. So let's get into my story today. I thought I'd take a little scientific twist. My story is longer than Jason's. And for the first time in my life, I will practice brevity. So I threw it into the chat GPT to give you the condensed version. And then I'm going to highlight a couple of the statistics and factoids and kick it off and let my esteemed panelists tell me what they think. So this article is from Marijuana Moment. Marijuana consumers have significantly decreased odds of cognitive decline, study finds. The study discussed in the article investigates the relationship between marijuana use and subjective cognitive decline, SCD, among middle-aged and older adults. It finds that recreational cannabis use is associated with lower odds of SCD, even though previous research had linked subjective decline to the development of dementia. The researchers analyzed data from the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System, that's the BRFSSSS, focusing on respondents aged 45 years and older in Washington, D.C. and 14 U.S. states. They looked at 3 cannabis variables: frequency of use, reason for use, medical, non-medical, or both, method of consumption. The results show that non-medical cannabis use is significantly associated with reduced odds of SCD compared to non-users. However, the association with medical cannabis use was not significant. The study suggested several explanations for these findings, including potential benefits of cannabis on sleep quality and stress reduction. While some tests indicated a positive association between cannabis frequency and SCD, the relationships were not statistically significant. Additionally, SCD was more common in people who reported using cannabis for both medical or non-medical use compared with those who used it only for non-medical reasons. The study acknowledges limitations such as possible bias and self-reported data, especially in states where non-medical cannabis use is illegal. It calls for further research to explore the underlying mechanisms contributing to the observed associations. The article also discusses other recent studies on marijuana's effects, including one that found minimal acute impact on cognitive function among patients with chronic health conditions. It highlights growing evidence suggesting that fears about the long-term cognitive effect of cannabis may be overblown, with some studies even indicating potential cognitive improvements and reduced medication usage among certain groups. Overall, while the study didn't dismiss past findings on the cognitive risks of frequent or heavy cannabis use, it emphasizes the need for more detailed research considering various factors such as reason for use. So that's my little chat summary, but I wanted to just read 3 little highlighted parts from the long version of the article. The first, the study, which showed that recreational cannabis use is significantly linked to lower SCD, is especially notable given that past research has connected subjective decline to the development of dementia later in life. The results, which were published in the journal Current Alzheimer's Research this month, indicated that THC's impact on cognitive function may be more complicated than popularly assumed. Compared to non-users, the study says non-medical cannabis use was significantly associated with a 96% decreased odds of SCD. I really like that statistic. If it's only for confirmation bias, I like that 96%. The other thing I thought was worth quoting was, quote, we found that non-medical cannabis use was significantly associated with reduced odds of SCD in comparison to non-users, the study says, noting a number of possible explanations for the findings. I like that as well because I think there's a very, very blurry line between cannabis as an attempt for humans to create homeostasis, wellness, and medicine. And so finding new medical outcomes or benefits from people who don't see themselves as medical users is always of interest to me. Authors suggested several possible theories for why cannabis use could be tied to lower self-reported cognitive decline, including that people often use marijuana to cope with insomnia and other sleep issues, noting that a recent study found that more frequent sleep disturbances were associated with higher dementia risks in a national U.S. older adult sample. Several studies have found that cannabis use might enhance sleep qualities, expedite sleep onset, and reduce sleep disturbances. Non-medical cannabis use could have contributed to the observed increase in SCD due to its popular benefit on sleep quality, the discussion section of the newspaper says. The SUNY researchers also pointed out that many people use cannabis to alleviate stress, noting that past studies have shown that CBD could effectively reduce stress, and elevated stress levels could be associated with reduced cognitive function among older adults. And lastly, for my final quote of the article, shots fired. Studies from 2018, meanwhile, found that marijuana may actually increase working memory and that cannabis use doesn't actually change the structure of the brain. And contrary to then President Trump's claim that marijuana makes people lose IQ points, the National Institute of Drug Abuse says the results of 2 longitudinal studies did not support a causal relationship between marijuana use and IQ loss. So let me kick this back to my other panelists and say, what do you think, Jason Beck? Trump doesn't seem to be up on the science. Do you think this is the only area where he's not up to speed?
Well, I mean, first of all, you're using a very, very old quote that I think you're taking out of context.
How old is it? Do we have on?
It's old. It's back when he was the president, so we know it's probably 5-6 years old. Because I remember when you said this, I had all kinds of people hitting me up asking me about it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I'm not too worried about it.
I'm just saying the only orange hairs I like are the ones that are on Bud. Politicians.
Oh God! Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. I mean,
you gonna let him talk about your?
He thinks he's a sniper today, but he's getting nothing but misses. It's okay. He thinks just because we can't see him that he can just fire off whatever today and whatnot. It's okay.
I'm under the table.
Yeah, under the table, under the rug. Yes.
Hey,
now, But
I might be under the table, but my shots are documented.
I do think though that this is fantastic news though overall, Yarrow. I mean, I know a number of people, a lot of seniors that have been having cognitive disorders and that have started with cannabis, and they do say that they are starting to remember things that they had thought they had forgotten or whatnot. And then I have to like go back a step, because I learned from I've had a couple head injuries over the years, and so one of the things I learned from one of these brain doctors is they said that you actually never lose a memory. It's just a thing that you can't find it. So if you imagine that your memory is basically like a file cabinet and everything is really, really organized, and then if you have a traumatic head injury, it's basically like taking that file cabinet and shaking it upside down. And then your brain is trying to reorganize all those files to find exactly where it is. And so you don't actually ever forget anything. It's just whether you can find it.
Yeah, you just
like my keys.
Yes,
Like
exactly. Exactly, Yarrow. Exactly like your keys. Exactly.
So I'm hesitant to take anything that these people say, like the DCCR or whatever it is, like up until like a few years ago was calling homosexuality a disease that had to be cured and all those things. So like, yeah, we want to celebrate situations where they have a study or two that go in our favor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we always like to see progress. But again, like I don't like jumping on the bandwagon of these studies that are done by the National Drug Abuse Institute that says, oh, well, hey, we have this one study over here that says you don't turn into a mentally incapacitated person once you smoke cannabis now. So applaud us for that.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think so. I'm not going to give you any applause for that, because some of the most creative, intuitive people I've met in my life have been people who consume cannabis, and they're most creative and most intuitive while on cannabis. So it's not a cannabis is not a panacea. It's not a cure-all. It doesn't go for everything.
Very true.
You know what I mean? It doesn't. It's not something that you can just say, hey, we'll throw cannabis at it and it'll work. It's not that. But for certain people, in certain settings, with the right cannabis, it can definitely enhance the situation, enhance the creativity, enhance an intelligence, enhance memory, enhance all of the things that we've been told for years it doesn't do. Oh, stoner mentality that as soon as I smoke weed, I become this bumbling idiot that can't find anything and I lose everything. And, that's just not true. It's not true. Now, does cannabis affect some people to where they become inebriated, like incapacitated in a way where they can't do certain daily functions? Absolutely it does. But it doesn't. And for other people, it can even enhance their daily functions. Mm-hmm. So once we get away from these labels and these categories that make cannabis, the stupid drug, the stoner drug, the idiot drug, the drug that makes you like this or like that. Listen, we don't know even what these cannabinoids do. We can't say what they do to you because we really don't know. I'm going to be the one that tells you the truth right now. We do not know. But I will tell you, I know certain I know what certain cannabinoids do for me with certain strands and certain cultivars. So that's what you have to do. You have to be able to go in certain directions and find the specific medicines that work for you. And it sucks that we have to do it like this, because at the end of all these studies, they always say, we don't have enough data, though. We don't have enough data to say this. We don't have enough studies to say this. Well, there's a reason you don't have enough data and you don't have enough studies, because you continually block it. And you have blocked it for years and years and years, as more universities and more institutions have tried to gain access to cannabis to be able to do these studies that you say you don't have enough of. Drop the mic.
So what I really appreciated about what Luke just said is that anytime we have a study and we're looking at results, it's really important to pay attention to who created that study, who funded that study, and whether there's some bias in it. And so for that reason alone, I really appreciate the article I brought today, because it was generated by Syracuse University in their medical department. And
Mm-hmm.
so I like that we're not getting data from overseas because of our inability to do research here. I like that it is a college I know about. I like that the study sample size was almost 5,000 people. With the broader the sample size, the better. And I think what Luke is talking about is the individuality of the way in which our personal endocannabinoid systems interact with the 150 plus cannabinoids. And I like that he said that because it touches part of what this article discussed, which was that part of the thing that they talked about was that it had to do with frequency, the type of cannabis people used, as well as their delivery systems. And so taking into account all of those variables, I think what Luke is saying is not that we don't know, but that we are nibbling at the beginning of a massive amount of information that's going to take a very long time to create. Nobody should be speaking definitively. And he's right. Every time you get a study, whether it's positive or negative, good or bad, up, down, sad, happy, they always call for more research. And so sometimes I think that's a way of them hedging their results. Sometimes I also think that's a way of scientists being activists by reminding us that our history of restricting their ability to create this information is putting us behind the curve, not ahead of the curve in terms of advancing the science. And the final thing I would say, in appreciating what Luke was talking about, is the difference between short-term effects versus long-term effects. I think many people can subjectively communicate the short-term effects of their cannabis usage and the way in which they feel it affects them. But I think the long-term effects are a place where it makes a lot of sense to loop in doctors and to create these aggregated data sets.
Well said. Well said, you guys. Wow. Man. I can't. I don't have anything else to say on this. I think you guys did a fantastic job. We're going to go to a commercial. We're going to be right back. Thank you, Yarl. I'm Jason Beck, and this is Smoky Vanilla. And if you want to feel as good as I look, then you need to get yourself a stretch and smoke with Smoky Vanilla.
That's right, baby. I'm Smoky Vanilla with my background in kinesiology. I'm a sports massage therapist and stretch coach. I focus mostly on athletes who have chronic pain or injury due to their sport, or the legends of the chronic in the game, baby.
Oh, yeah, you know what it is. We just stretched, and now we're gonna smoke, because you know what it is.
That's right. I love intuitively creating a session based on the individual I'm working with. We'll go through a few assessments, look at the past health history, injury, or anything that's still affecting you today, and create a customized session just for you. Let's go.
Yeah, Heather
yeah.
looks
Stop
good in
whatever
that.
you're doing. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, as well as all of the articles that we cover on today's show. You can read directly on our website at www.highat9news.com.
The Control Tower from Highly Educated has perfected the dab. Utilizing the concept of thin film evaporation, you can waste none of it and taste all of it. The micro texture of the SE pillar increases nucleation at elevated temperatures. And with the tower propelling at 2,600 RPMs, it's certainly the most efficient dab experience to date. The Control Tower from Highly Educated.
Yes, coming up next, that's right, it's Mr. Luke Scaramazzo, who at one point in time did some time for a cannabis crime, and where you can also find his book at Amazon and all across the bookstores across the country, High Price, his little memoir of solitary confinement. That's right, is none other than Mr. Luke Scaramazzo.
Yes.
Yes.
Happy Monday, everybody. It's a hard one to get up to sometimes on Monday, but it's the beginning of the week. You set your week with how you begin your Mondays, and we like to set them really nicely over here at High at 9 News. Thank you for tuning in to us, Jason and Yarrow. Rico had to dip out, but we're still going to represent here for him. I got an interesting article today. This one taps in over at our little bro over in Arizona, and they have a bill that's aimed to claw back some of the marijuana social equity licenses from investors and corporate dispensaries. So this has been a problem that we've talked about here on the news here plenty of times. We have a lot of social equity is a well-intentioned program, but a lot of situations where just in practical uses, it just doesn't work well in certain situations. Sometimes certain localities have restrictions, some don't have restrictions, and both of those things have pluses and minuses, and we're seeing that play out all over the country, and that's no different here in Arizona. So we'll jump right into this. This is coming to you from Marijuana Moment, and it's Arizona lawmakers are pushing to return social equity licenses for marijuana dispensaries to their original owners, alleging private investors and cannabis corporations use predatory tactics to seize control of nearly all of the lucrative licenses. Senate Bill 1262, introduced by Republican Sonny Borelli, seeks to restore to those the state's social equity program was meant to benefit, people from marginalized communities disproportionately affected by past marijuana convictions. It would also allow the state's Attorney General's office to investigate and punish entities that exploited those individuals. Quote, "What we have here is an injustice that needs to be fixed," Borelli of Lake Havasu City said during a February 13th Senate hearing. I agree. There's definitely maybe some injustices here, Mr. Borelli. I don't believe this is like the paramount one that you have going on in your state right now. And, I understand being from Lake Havasu, things can get a little bit hazy and crazy that you don't remember all the injustices going on. So we're just going to keep on pushing forward, though, for here, big dog. He says, we now have in Arizona a situation where 24 of the 26 of these social equity licenses are now fully controlled by companies or people who do not belong in these special groups to get these licenses, end quote. The legislation comes less than a year after the expensive reporting by AZ Circle showed that the social equity program, part of a 2020 ballot initiative that legalized recreational marijuana in Arizona, was not working as intended, with powerful players hijacking much of the process. Today, just one original applicant fully owns their social equity license and has opened a dispensary independent of the large cannabis companies. Another two partnered with prominent brands to launch dispensaries, though they still have equity in their licenses. The 23 licenses are owned by investors and corporations that go by familiar names like Soul Flower, Mint Cannabis, Mohave Cannabis, Jars Cannabis, and Stores Cannabis. Do they all have to have the word cannabis in their name, or is that just like, I don't know, it just kind of felt like that was all, is that the same company?
They couldn't afford branding companies with the grant.
Is there no marketing going on in the desert?
They're all cannabis companies, bro.
Definitely, I guess so. And even the one that's not cannabis says flower, and so they're going really in the other direction. Anyhow,
who's gonna trademark tumbleweed for them desert states?
Yeah, those names with after it, and then all of those names also with Doja after it. All of those names with Yeska after it. All of them, you know what I'm saying? We can just, I'm getting off track. My bad. So, quote, the way this social equity license things is supposed to work is people that apply for it are supposed to maintain 51% ownership, Borelli said. Instead, many applicants signed agreements with financial backers who later muscled them out, he explained, echoing Arizona Circle's key findings. Technically, people are supposed to have the social equity license don't get it. The ones who do have the social equity license would not qualify for it in the first place. Whether you agree with the marijuana business or not, it's completely unfair, Borelli said. Though Senate Bill 1262 advanced out of the Senate's Health and Human Services Committee with a unanimous bipartisan support, the bill faces a steep climb. Because it involves a voter-backed initiative, it will require the approval of 2/3 of the House and Senate to become law. But if it succeeds, the measure will create a new state-backed avenue for squeezed-out social equity license holders to fight back. Those of you unfamiliar with the legislature process, to get the approval of 3/4 of a House and Senate,
Forget about it.
In 2024 is we're gonna say it's gonna be more than what they called it, a steep climb. You're gonna be climbing up like a waterfall of hot lava, melting your body off of the face of the rock. Anyhow, sorry for that vivid picture. Last July, for instance, Arizona Circle detailed the story of Denzel Mason, a South Phoenix resident recruited by cannabis powerhouse Copper State Farms to apply for a social equity license. Copper State, which has the largest indoor grow facility in the country and 9 Soulflower branded dispensaries throughout Arizona, found Mason and other potential partners through a program dubbed Your Bright Horizon, ultimately submitting 106 applications alongside its social equity counterparts. When the Arizona Department of Health Services chose winners for more than 1,300 applicants in its April 2022 lottery, Copper State and its partners secured 3 licenses, including one it had applied with Mason, who worked in the cannabis industry for years and intended to open his own dispensary. But the party soon ended up in a legal battle involving an operating agreement Mason had signed prior to the lottery, with Copper State claiming the LLC Mason jointly owned with Young Bright Horizon owed the company up to $3 million. About $800,000 would have potentially reimbursed Copper State for what it allegedly spent to participate in the social equity program, including the community outreach efforts it used to recruit Mason and others. I know nothing about Copper State. I know nothing about how much it costs to enter into programs.
Copper State's
but
a major,
I do think that definitely defeats.
Copper State's a big grow. Copper State is a big greenhouse, state-of-the-art cultivation in Arizona. They got a lot of money.
Awesome. It sounds like it. But what I was saying is, I think it kind of defeats the purpose of a social equity program if you have to spend $800K to get into it. I'm just saying, on the surface, I don't know anything about anything. I'm just saying. The court eventually sided with Copper State after Mason balked at those terms, temporarily removing Mason in the business. A few months later, Copper State bought Mason's stake in the license for an undisclosed amount. Mason got paid. We don't know how much. He got some bread. Mason did not respond at the press time to a request for comment, but on SB 1262, which would give him and other original license holders a way to report and potentially take back control from investors and corporations they believe targeted them with predatory agreements. SB 1262 defines a predatory agreement as any agreement signed before or within 12 months after a social equity license was issued that required the original principal officer or board member to sell, transfer, or give control of the officers or members' ownership interest less than minimum fair market value. Okay. That's very, very language. I'm not sure like any of that would be enforceable, but I'm not an attorney, so I will leave that to people who are smarter than me. We'll continue. The fair market value element could be potentially relevant in another case highlighted by Arizona Circle. That is that of Tucson resident Annabelle Vasquez. And this basically goes on to talk about Annabelle Vasquez's case and how she lost the license and hasn't been compensated at all. And according to records, it's because she went through arbitration and the arbitrator just gave license, I guess, to the other company. Not sure it doesn't give any details on the case, but it sounds like a pretty messed up situation. Says, basically goes on to talk about how all these licenses are just owned by these companies except for the 2 licenses, and then it says, it ends with the Department of Health and Human Services, which oversees the program, also did not respond to multiple requests for comments regarding the deadline and other alleged violations. The quote, things need to work fairly, and when they don't, it's our job as legislators to be able to step in and say, this is what needs to be done, Senator Lupe Diaz said. One of the bill's 3 Republican co-sponsors told Arizona Circle. The enforcement on the bill itself will help that. So we have an interesting situation here. Like, again, it's one of those things that we've talked about a lot on this show, right? We've talked about social equity. We've talked about predatory practices by large companies. We've also talked about the need for people who are jumping into this space, social equity or not, if you're not familiar with law and the industry and business, to be able to have these contracts reviewed and these anything that you put your name to, whether it's 12 months before, 12 months after, anytime you're putting your name on anything in this business or any business, please make sure that what you're signing is legal, for one. Make sure that it represents your interests in the best way possible, in the best form, and make sure it has been reviewed by somebody other than you. Because if you sign your name on something, it's hard to go before an arbitrator or arbitration or a judge or court and say, hey, I didn't know I was signing away 51% of my company, when it says I am signing away 51% of my company. So, like, please, before that happens, have these contracts looked over, and you can, and a lot of these social equity problems can be at least maneuvered around at that beginning stage. Your problems do not end there. Trust and believe that. But at least we won't be handicapped right out of the gate. I'm interested to hear what Yarrow and Jay have to say on this, because, like I said, it's something that we've talked extensively about here at High at Night.
Well, you want to hit this first, Yarrow? Or you want me to go?
No, let's save the best for last and let you go next.
Okay. All right. Well, basically, I mean, this bill sounds good in hindsight, but I don't understand how they're actually going to be able to enforce on any of this, Luke, as you pointed out when you were reading it. And I think everybody, in essence, wants the social equity applicant to be in control and whatnot. But at the same time, how do they really expect to find investors to invest into them without giving up some type of control for monetary value? So I'm very perplexed as to how this would even be enforced, or how they would even be able to actually make it actually work, aside from just passing it as a standalone bill and just saying, here, this is the law.
Besides hiring the High at 9 news panel to sit in on these programs and help them craft these policies, which would they would avoid all these other problems. So we are, just to let Arizona know, we are for hire for these type of situations. We can sit in on your panels. We can give the real input you need to create comprehensive policies that work in your community. Mm-hmm. Drop that. Go ahead, y'all.
There we go.
Yeah. So look, I'm gonna come with a very specific set of lenses. I do want to correct Luke on one important point. He said that there are a lot of lawyers that are smarter than him. I also need to let our viewership know there are a lot of lawyers who are not as smart as Luke. And just because somebody passed the bar does not mean they are a cognitive giant. I do appreciate and shout out to the International Cannabis Bar Association, and a good lawyer is like a great cop. Nobody appreciates them until you need one. And Luke, you are being far too humble. I've seen some lawyers just make a mess out of things that weren't messed up to begin with. Now, on to the social equity piece. I'm verified social equity in San Francisco. I'm verified social equity in Sonoma County. These programs are incredibly imperfect. The last time I got grant funding from San Francisco, I had to show $72,000 spent receipts. And then they decided not to reimburse me because the money was spent out of a bank account that didn't have my name on it, even though it was my social security number as the EIN for that bank account. And there was no due process, no right to appeal. I asked for a phone call. They wouldn't even call me. It was super FUBAR. So I'm more concerned and focused on how the resources that are put into these programs are disseminated, and to make sure that there is a measure of codification in terms of the practices, as well as due process for when that gets messed up. Now, here's the problem. The problem is well-intended legislation and the unintended consequences. For example, in San Francisco, they're telling us social equity applicants that we couldn't even divest of our business for 5 years. And so on the one hand, I don't want to see social equity applicants taken advantage of. On the other hand, sometimes selling out is the new keeping it real. And if you can take some low-hanging fruit, not everything needs to be a home run. Take them base hits, take those checks, take some money. Because if I hear somebody else say intergenerational wealth again when it comes to standing up a social equity cannabis business, I'm going to take a used gym sock and shove it down their throat. Because if you really want intergenerational wealth, I suggest you look at real estate, not a nascent industry that is still maturing. The other thing that comes to mind for me is when somebody puts up a change, not in the way a program is effectuated, but in the law, and you have to have 3/4 pass. We can't even decide in my family with a 3/4 majority what we are going to eat for dinner tomorrow night. So the notion that they're going to get something passed through 3/4 of a legislative body is a joke. Okay. And so I am very concerned about the fact that the majority of these licenses are not owned by those people. And also that because of the real estate work I do and the companies I work for and with, there was a last deluge of applicants into this program that were all affiliated with a few companies. And this stuff, I'd like to think that there was an administrative mechanism to peel back some of that sooner versus going through an amendment of the law, which is a really slow and inefficient process. So that's what comes up for me. And the other thing that I think about is there's no such thing as a foolproof system. You give a tax loophole, you're going to find corporations exploit it. And so these companies are always going to be at least a half a step ahead of these programs. And so I wrestle with where do we make those adjustments versus where does repealing a program become a stifling influence on capital pouring into those programs or capital pouring into programs in new markets and new states, because investors and capitalists and companies that are only here to make money, are worried that their programs or their deals or their contracts are going to be rolled back. And Jason is 100% right. I hate to admit that. That was like a big tear coming out of my eye. I even have to tattoo it.
That's right.
I might have to tattoo that tear like I was just coming out of soul, Dad, because Jason's 100% right. If a business takes $800,000 to stand up, and if you want to support social equity operators in standing up those businesses, and if capital is and continues to be a barrier to entry, if you don't let them partner with people and you don't create rules and guidelines that still favor dilution and capitalism, then you have a broken system, because the biggest challenge for most social equity operators is access to capital. So you got to be able to dilute. You got to be able to play with other people's money. You got to be able to act like a normal business. And a normal business, if you go out and raise almost $1 million, you may be giving up control of your company to do that. And that has nothing to do with social equity. And that just has to do with capitalism in 2024. You blame the system. We could talk about how it could be better, but that is still the zeitgeist as it exists right here and right now. And restriction on social equity operators being able to be capitalists is really a bastardization of the intention of these programs, in my not so humble opinion.
Well, Yarrow, you painted that picture again, just like in the Missouri thing, that with everything getting watered down, bro. Everything is getting watered down. You can't have that business. It's not going to work out. It's not going to work out if you can't bring in the right money and bring in the right partners. It's just never going to work. But we're going to go to our final commercial. We're going to be right back. Go ahead, Yarrow.
Yep. Well, I was just going to say, Troll Central said in the chat, even if you sign away 50%, 51%, keep control. There are very skilled lawyers, ones that are almost as smart as Luke, who can write in differences in terms of control, equity, revenue share. But if you're going to take on hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of somebody else's money in your company, let's not pretend that giving up some measure or a large measure of control is exploitative. And here's my final thing, I am sick and tired of people who act like a victim but don't read their own agreements. Yes, rely on counsel. But if your lazy ass didn't open up that 27-page PDF and read it cover to cover 3 times, I don't feel sorry for you at all. I do not feel sorry for people who transact their own business lazily and then want to play the victim. And unfortunately, there are, and it's not a small percentage, people who say, I was taking advantage of it. Like, well, did you read your documents? No. Well, then you're lazy. And you unfortunately manifested all of that by not treating your business like it was a business, not honoring the opportunity, and not being industrious as an entrepreneur. And there are far too many people who think that they don't have to put in the work, the late night, highlight a document, put some yellow ink over the things in the text that they don't understand to get clarity on it. And shame all of them, because they are doing the rest of us, those industrious, hardworking, verified social equity applicants who are grinding to make it work. They're doing us all a disservice.
So very well said, Yarrow.
Get ready for the 20-year anniversary celebration of the Emerald Cup. The Emerald Cup will be held at the Henry J. Kaiser Center for the Arts in downtown Oakland, May 4th and 5th. Get your tickets now for best pricing. Cannabis categories include flower, pre-rolls, solventless concentrates, solvent concentrates, cartridges, edibles, topicals, tinctures, and alternative cannabinoids. So enter early for your chance to be a winner at the 20-year anniversary Emerald Cup competition.
The intermission? No, I'm just fucking.
Oh boy.
Like foam.
Oh, whoa, with all your guys' phone parties. Easy there, guys.
I'm just saying, those are usually the best parties, the one with foam. Cancun, think about it.
I'm
Every foam party was the best party you ever went to.
Oh, man.
I'm foaming at the mouth just thinking about it.
I bet. Well, I got something else for you guys to foam over.
Foam home.
Okay. So in the essence of time, we do cover 6 stories a day. So this I'm just gonna read the one line and with this, and if you want to learn more and where this money is going, then you can go to our website at www.high9news.com, and then I'll read the final story. But adult use marijuana payments are being distributed. That's right. The Michigan Department of Treasury today announced that more than $87 million is being distributed among 269 municipalities and counties as part of the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act. So, they're going to be just throwing your tax money around, and they still haven't found that $40 million from the veterans. But Michigan, you guys can read more about that. But what we're really going to talk about, you guys, on our last story is lawmakers to hold a public hearing on changes to Maine's marijuana laws. A bill to amend Maine's cannabis law will get a public hearing today in Augusta. Supporters say the bill would address the stigma that some cannabis operators feel exists in the current state law. Alex McMahon, a registrant in the medical program and an adult use licensee who worked on the proposed amendment, he says annual fingerprinting and FBI background checks are among the existing requirements for operators that would be removed in the amended law. In quotes, Maine has the opportunity to show there is another way to regulate cannabis that doesn't treat cannabis operators like criminals. We don't want special treatment. We want to be treated like any other industry, he says. Bill sponsor Senator Craig Hickman says the bill, in quote, reframes the policy priorities of the Office of Cannabis Policy and will allow licenses to more efficiently run their businesses, increase revenues, and lower prices for consumers who might be drawn to illicit markets. John Brady, co-founder of Brilliant Buds adult use cannabis stores in Bethel and Auburn, says he's troubled by some of the provisions in the amendment that could relax adult use access for minors defined as under the age of 21. He says, in quotes, "We're taking off the guardrails that we worked so hard over the years to establish to make this a legitimate enterprise. This bill undoes all of that. We've worked hard to establish a good reputation for Maine cannabis, and we want to keep it that way," he says. And Brady says lowering the state's excise tax on cannabis is a better way to help operators struggling financially, and a spokesperson for the Office of Cannabis Policy says the office will testify against the amendment. Well, Maine, you may have some questions or some new things going on, you guys, but nonetheless, what do y'all have to say about this? Are you guys there?
My main man.
Yeah. Oh, there you are. I hear you both now. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, Maine.
Listen. Maine got a lot of shit. They got a lot of stuff going on over there right now. I don't really know if I agree totally with everything Maine has going on, but in this particular situation, like, I just gotta say they're my main man.
Mm-hmm. I see what you did there. What do you think on this, Yarrow?
Normally I'm full of words. Brevity's not my forte, and perhaps I should pare down my opinions. On this, I don't think I have much to contribute.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. And on that, we are going to wrap this up, you guys. Thank you all so much for tuning in every Monday through Friday to High at 9 News, America's #1 daily cannabis news show. Thank you to Yarrow, Luke, for tuning in, and thank you to everyone in our audience tuning in. Thank you to all of our sponsors and whatnot, and we appreciate all of you. You all have an amazing day, and the show will be a little bit better tomorrow. We won't have as many technical difficulties. Adam will be back in the building.
I'll be visible.
Yes, you will be visible.
I'll be visible.
You will be visible. That is for sure. You all have a blessed day today. Stay care.